Hello, everybody. Welcome again to another episode of Wisconsin Icons. I'm your host, Bob Dolan. As always, it's great to have you with me. Thanks so much for your interest. My title sponsor is Pasternak and Zergabel, award-winning injury attorneys, and you can find their assistance at www.injurywisconsin.com. So welcome not only to another episode of Wisconsin Icons, but welcome to my favorite time of the year. I love the Christmas season, always have, and hopefully always will. We were very lucky when I was a kid growing up, and mom and dad would always provide some great Christmases and great Christmas memories for myself and my four brothers and sisters. Then when my wife and I have had our two daughters, we had some great Christmases when they were little, and it's very refreshing and uplifting to see them now as mothers of children and carrying on many of the same traditions that we started so many years ago. I love Christmas music. I think it's one of the great musical genres of any. I love Christmas decorations, Christmas cookies, Christmas gifts, especially those that are for me, and just the Christmas celebrations, and that we all just seem to try a little harder to be nice. So welcome to my favorite time of year. I'm a big guy. I'm a big believer in Christmas traditions, including this one. The Milwaukee Rep has for 48 years now put on a superb production of A Christmas Carol. In fact, the 48 years is one of the longest runs in the country. It's always highly acclaimed. It's always either near capacity or sold out year after year, and it's held, as you all know, in the beautiful and historic Pabst Theater in downtown Milwaukee. It's been a part of my family's Christmas season tradition for so many of those 48 years, and it's performing again now, and it will run through Christmas Eve. And if I could say one word about the Christmas Carol to you, go. You'll enjoy it very much. And not only you, but also your kids and grandkids. This year's Ebenezer Scrooge is Matt Daniels. In fact, he's a returning Scrooge at the Rep, and performances are underway. And this is one of Matt's most treasured roles. And this is what Matt looks like when he doesn't look like Ebenezer Scrooge. This is Matt Daniels, who portrays Ebenezer Scrooge in the Milwaukee Rep's A Christmas Carol, underway now through Christmas Eve. Matt, I'm honored to have you on Wisconsin Icons. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
The name of the show, as you know, is Wisconsin Icons. And in this case, you're kind of a stand-in for the Rep itself. Because as you know, the Milwaukee Rep has put this production on for nearly 50 years. And you were in it last year. You were Scrooge last year, but every year it's so well received. So the icon may be this production in the Milwaukee Rep, but you're a wonderful spokesman for us. So I appreciate your time.
Well, I certainly appreciate being the stand-in for what is, as you say, it's definitely iconic, and it is. Yeah. I think it holds such an important place in people's hearts here in the city, and so it's really an honor to be able to be a part of it.
Let's get to know you a little bit before we talk about the production and we talk about you as Ebenezer. Where are you born? Born and raised where?
Born and raised in Los Angeles,
okay.
Actually. And upon graduating from high school, I moved to New York City, where I went to Juilliard for my drama school, and was in New York for a couple of years after that before making my way to the Midwest.
When did the acting bug first hit you?
Early, almost as early as I can remember. Yeah. I don't really remember a different path.
Was there a big role, or perhaps you were part of a big production which finally convinced you that you could do this, that you belonged?
That's a really interesting question. I mean, there was a dinner theater in the San Fernando Valley called the Showboat Dinner Theater, which had like a youth theater component that I had done a bunch of camps with and stuff like that. And then I got cast in one of those plays as a, like a young performer in, I think it was The Music Man. And I started to think, oh, this is a thing that people can do. I was maybe 11 at that point, or 12, something like that. And from there, I definitely never looked back.
Everybody seems to have The Music Man somewhere in their background. Really, everybody I talk to, it always comes back to The Music Man. How did you end up here in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin?
Yeah, so while in New York, I met who was later to become my wife, Carrie Murphy, and she grew up here in Milwaukee. And at a certain point, as people do, we both had gotten burned out on just living in New York, the sort of grind of that city. And we're looking for somewhere else. And we made our way to Chicago first. We were in Chicago for a few years before I started working in Milwaukee quite a bit while being a Chicago actor at the old Milwaukee Shakespeare. And so I was sort of working up here enough that it made sense for us to be able to, like, let's move to Milwaukee and buy a house and, live a life. And so that's what brought us here.
Matt, what's the reputation nationwide in the acting community of the Milwaukee Rep?
It's interesting. Milwaukee Rep is it is the biggest theater in the state, and it has all of the cachet of a great regional theater. But because it's Wisconsin, it does fly under the radar, I think, nationally. But what's really interesting about it is that whenever visiting actors come through to the Rep, they are always so impressed by the resources that the Rep has, by the care that the Rep takes of their actors, and by the quality of the performances that we put on here. And so it feels a little bit like a well-kept secret to me as far as what the Rep's sort of prominence is. I would say that until this most recent production that the Rep did of Run Bambi Run, which had a ton of national attention and has a little bit of buzz behind it nationally. And I think we'll probably end up raising the Rep's profile a bit. So, for me, it's a great sweet spot of like having this little gem that I get to be a part of, that everyone gets to come and be sort of amazed by, rather than coming in thinking, all right, Milwaukee Rep, show me what you're made of.
Right. And they always do. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
talk, Matt, about Matt Daniels as Ebenezer Scrooge. Now, this is one of the most familiar and famous characters, not only in theatrical history, but also in literature. We all know Ebenezer Scrooge. We all know his story. So does that make it difficult for you to be Ebenezer Scrooge? Because we all know what's coming. We know the story. We know how it ends. We know how you get there. We know what you're saying. Is that harder for you, or is that an easy thing?
I think it's a little bit from column A and a little bit from column B. I feel like one of the things that's great about the fact that we all know where it's going is that the audience almost immediately buys in from the beginning. And so there's a sense of, I just want to see how this story plays out. We come to it every year. It's tradition. It's almost a ritual, right? And so with that ritual aspect, I think that it's not that you can do no wrong, but there is a little bit of support there. At the same time, when I came to this, knowing about that nearly 50-year history here in Milwaukee, and filling the shoes of lots of really great actors who have come before me in this role, I wanted to make sure that I had my own spark to it. And so I worked really hard in my approach last year, and I'm continuing now as I'm preparing, as we're going through things, to revisit it and make sure that I'm not taking any of it for granted. So there's the side of it, which is it's ritual and everybody knows it. So there are certain things about that you take for granted. But as the actor, I have to make sure that I don't, and try to figure out where those things meet.
That's an interesting realization, and I think any actor who's ever portrayed Scrooge probably comes to that, because all of us grew up watching either a famous Hollywood, George C. Scott. I go back to Alistair Sim, that version of Christmas Carol, which is still played on TV every year. Albert Finney did a Christmas Carol musical type of thing.
Yeah, that was the one that I grew up with.
It was okay. And you know who I think was the best Scrooge in a movie was Michael Caine. Now you might laugh in the Muppet Carol.
That is my favorite of
he's
them.
Tremendous.
I mean, I think from start to finish, that movie is my favorite cinematic adaptation.
But that realization that you just referred to, that you're trying not to be George C. Scott, you're trying not to be all of the actors at the Rep that preceded you as Scrooge. But how do you find, okay, I got to make this very famous character my own? Because there's not, you can't tweak it a whole bunch. You can't add a twist or a surprise or, so how do you do that? Or do you take that approach with every role you have?
I do take that approach with every role I have. And for me, I always go back to the source material. So if it's an adaptation, I've got this dog-eared copy of the text here, which has, underlines and highlights and, and stars and all of this stuff, where I try to tease out tiny little hints and clues about who this guy is that Dickens gave us. And then the stuff that resonates to me is not necessarily going to be the stuff that resonated to, Jim Pickering or whomever has come before. And so I take those things, and like, for example, for me, one of the things that really resonated, because I'm an actor who approaches roles physically first. One of the things that stuck out to me is that Scrooge is described pretty early on as having ferret eyes. And I thought, ferret, what is it about Scrooge that is a ferret? And so then I went down a whole ferret hole of watching ferrets on YouTube and like trying to figure out how they move and what they're about and what makes him ferret-like. And from there, it just sort of teases out a whole aspect of character that, really lights up for me, that probably, well, I don't know, but I don't think lights up for many other people. And so just by allowing myself to take those flights of fancy, I think that we're all individual human beings on this world, right? Like, and Scrooge too is an individual, but because he has been laid out to us in this way, we all get to breathe life into him in a slightly different way, and it's our own breath that does it.
Scrooge, Matt, reveals lots of emotions from start to finish. And I wonder which one you find the most challenging to play. At the beginning, we see the crabby Scrooge. Later, we see the reflective Scrooge when it's Christmas past and Christmas present. Near the end, we see fearful Scrooge when he's looking at Christmas future and he's looking at his tomb and his gravestone. And then right at the end, we see the overjoyed, the giddy Scrooge when he realizes that I haven't missed Christmas Day. So those are 4 pretty wide ranges of emotion from one man, from one actor. Is there one that you really have to struggle and find?
It's a good question. I find that for me, the sort of great joy and support that I have in this role is having such a fantastic supporting cast, and they do a lot of that work, actually. So the mean Scrooge is so much of his power comes from the way others react to him. And the contemplative Scrooge and the heart-wrenching parts of Scrooge as he's watching his life pass comes from just taking in what's going on, watching these scenes that are being played by these other actors, and observing that and just being there for it. And then by the time you get to the end, you've gone through all of that, so it's easy to get to the joy of that release. So I guess the answer is, if I am able to, which every actor strives to and is not always successful every day of performance, if I'm able to really allow myself to leave Matt Daniels in the dressing room and take Scrooge on stage, all I really have to do is listen and respond. And then it's pretty easy to go. I mean, well, easy. It is. It's less challenging to go on the journey. It's a very difficult journey. It's nonstop 2-hour roller coaster for this man, but it's really well laid out on the page and on the stage to allow me to get to the places that I got to get to.
Well, I'm sure you know that every member of the audience is going through the same emotions that you / Scrooge are going through, because we all feel what we've all been there,
Yeah.
In fact, I appreciate your perspective, because I'm not an actor, and I know nothing about your skill and your talent. But one of the scenes or the segments of the production every year that gets me is Christmas Past, when he is allowed. And can you imagine, I always try to put myself there. If we had, I don't know if this would be a gift or a curse, but if we had the ability to look back and relive our past, watching from above, when you're a kid in school, when you're being bullied, when some tragedy occurs in your family or some great joy, can you imagine the power that would be for all of us? And now you have to portray that as Scrooge, looking back on your childhood and your difficulties and your heartache. And I can't comprehend how you convey that to us, because we're feeling the same darn thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's exactly it. It is both a blessing and a curse that he has the opportunity to truly see it. But it brings it back. I mean, I think about Ebenezer Scrooge as when we start the story, as a man who has gone through all of those experiences, and as a result of them, he's built this wall around himself, which is why no one can get past it, and he doesn't want to touch anybody because he's had a lot of hardships in his life, and he's really built this wall. And I feel like the journey for him is taking bricks out of the wall and
Sure.
rejoining society. And every time past or present shows him something, and even future a little bit, it's really about, having the opportunity to let the light through that little tiny hole in the wall and break another piece out. But yeah, it's scary. I think a lot of us live our lives trying to keep the past well behind us, or conversely, and I think it's a different way of looking at the way Scrooge lives his life, living way too much in the past.
Good.
Just staying there so much, and therefore I can't join you here. And it also makes me think of that great play Our Town, where at the end Emily is given this opportunity to go back and live the perfect day in her life, and it ruins her experience of death, because she realizes how much she missed in the time that she was living it, because we take so much for granted in our lives. So yeah, I mean, I agree about that. I feel like it's that's a 50-50 proposition there for sure.
It's a remarkable piece of work by Charles Dickens. and pretty much a remarkable piece of production by anybody who's ever done it, because it never gets old.
Hmm.
Imagine Dickens wrote this, 150 years ago, whatever. You hear the story for the 100th time and you're still captivated by what's about to transpire, and you know everything that's coming. That's a stunning piece of literature. And thanks to you and all of those who keep this alive. Just last question, Matt. Bottom line, is this a fun role or is this a draining role?
Oh, is that a mutually exclusive proposition? I feel it is both for sure. It is very fun in the doing of it, but when we have 8 or 9 performances in a week,
Yeah.
it's that's all. It's sort of all I've got in the tank is that.
Yeah.
So the answer to your question is yes. It is a fun role and it is a draining role. But I think that it's all worth it, because as you say, it's this thing that we keep coming back to. It still has this power, it still has this magic, and it still has this ability to remind us all of what it is to be human beings in the world together, and not living our own solitary lives with no contact. That we require each other to make it through, and it takes him a long time to figure that out, but once he does, it's just all worth it.
Matt, it's been a joy to pick your brain a little bit. I appreciate your time. You know what? I've always thought, again, I'm not an actor. I've always thought that if I could do one role, it'd be Scrooge, because every day of my life, I play an old, crabby, cheap guy. And so, so it probably come pretty second nature to me. Matt, best of luck to you and the entire cast. I know you're underway right now through Christmas Eve, and I wish you all great success, and Merry Christmas to you.
Well, thanks so much, Bob. Merry Christmas to you.
Take care.
All right, bye-bye.